Hello, Avon High School. These are the notes over Charles Darwin for April 15th, 2020. Now, while we're working through these notes, make sure that you keep an eye out for a star in the top right corner. Those are the PowerPoint slides that you need to take detailed notes over. As we're going through this, you should have the Schoology quiz over on the side for today's date, and pausing this video and answering those questions as we are moving through this together. Let's begin. Charles Darwin. He was born on the same exact day as Abraham Lincoln. Fascinating. And he actually studied theology in college, which is the study of religion. So people will often get upset about evolution not meshing well with religion, but Charles Darwin, the father of evolution, was very interested in religion and how it worked and was very faithful. At a certain point in time, he became a naturalist. He was obsessed with the earth and how beautiful it was, and he took a big trip along the HMS Beagle. After this, he saw the world, collected a ton of evidence, and came up with a theory of evolution based off of all of those observations. He published his theory of evolution in a book called On the Origin of Species in 1859 when he was 50 years old. So that's a little biography on him, but we're going to talk a little bit more about what his trip on the HMS Beagle looked like. So he is a young man here. This is happening in the 1830s, and he sailed from England, which is where he was from. He left on the Beagle, which is right there below my little mouse, and he traveled to South America, Africa, New Zealand, Australia, the Galapagos Islands. So he's in all of these different places around the world, documenting everything he's seeing in his little journal, writing it down, taking fossils with him, collecting evidence, and really his goal was just to see how our world fits together as a big, beautiful puzzle. So here's his trip. He started up here in Plymouth in England, and then he sailed all the way down to South America. He went down through Brazil with Rio de Janeiro, all the way around, and then this is the Galapagos Islands, which we're going to be talking a lot more about later on. Then, because the earth is not flat, children, he went around this side, came back, went to New Zealand, then to Australia, back around, went to Cape Town in Africa, back over here to South America, and then all the way back up to England before publishing his novel many years later. So on the Beagle, he studied quite a bunch of stuff. He looked at the difference within and between species, so like comparing dogs versus wolves. He looked at the differences between dogs themselves, like the difference between a Chihuahua and a Beagle and a Bulldog. He looked at living specimens. He actually collected quite a few bugs and other living organisms. He collected fossils and brought them back with him. He looked at geology, so how the shape of South America fits in with Africa. It almost looks like South America could nuzzle right into Africa there. So he's looking at the geology of things as well. And after he's collected all of this evidence, and he's trying to wonder, like, how does our world fit together? He comes up with the origin of species. Where do all species come from? How do we have all of this diversity and beauty within life? And that's where he came up with the origin of species. Now, I do want to shout out to another very important man here. Alfred Wallace in 1859, 1 year before Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species. He independently proposed the theory of evolution. He was like, we're seeing all of these animals. Where did they all come from? And he had a detailed list of where it came from, how it all fit together, and he was correct. He wrote to Darwin about this theory, prompting him to publish the theory that he had formed many years later on. And so Alfred Wallace did independently come up with the theory of evolution, but he did not publish a novel on it like Charles Darwin did. He didn't have the expansive evidence that Charles Darwin did. Darwin had a major advantage, and that was traveling the world and collecting evidence from Africa, South America, Australia, New Zealand. Alfred Wallace did not have that opportunity, and so therefore he is not the father of evolution. So, Galapagos Islands. Also note, we're getting a star up here, so this is important to write down. This is a group of islands off the western coast of South America, right next to Ecuador. And each island has its own unique climate, which is really kind of cool. There are some islands that have more of a desert feel, others that are more like a tropical, lush area. We have lots of beaches, we have a mountain range, and so because there is a lot of diversity in the geology and the way that these islands look, there's a lot of diversity within the animals as well. So, on the Galapagos Islands, Darwin observed 3 main organisms that we're going to be looking at in this class for his evidence. They found marine iguanas, which are like little lizards that like to live in the ocean. They found tortoises, which are really, really big turtles, and finches, which is a type of bird. They're small, but they do have a lot of diversity in how they actually look. So, just as a comparison, this is within the Galapagos Islands. This is also within the Galapagos Islands. If you're asking me, I would much rather have a vacation here than over here. This is really dry and arid. It's much more like a desert with the mountains. And over here, this looks like a beautiful beach. So, pause this video, answer question 1. Okay, moving on here. Let's talk about the finches. So these are the birds that Charles Darwin was really mesmerized with. And what he noticed is that they all were basically the same bird, but they each had their own beak. So the finches' beaks varied or changed depending on the environment that they lived in. So the question is, why might different species have different beaks? Well, if we have a vegetarian finch, this means that this finch is likely going to be eating a lot of like fruits, maybe leaves, maybe nuts, versus a large tree finch could be a little bit more focused on eating other bugs. So what he noticed is that their beaks were shaped in order to eat the things that they were getting. So if you're a vegetarian finch and you're cracking a bunch of nuts, then it's going to be a bigger beak so that you have the force to crack down on that shell to get to the fruit inside. If you are a bird that's going after a lot of bugs, it might be a little bit longer so it's easier to trap the bugs. So each one of these finches, while they are essentially the same bird, they all have their own unique tools in order to survive. Over here, this is an example of a tortoise. It's massive. You'll see those at zoos. And then this is a marine iguana. It's a lizard, maybe about like that big, and it loves to live in the water. It's one of the only few reptiles that we actually really see within the water nowadays. So let's pose a question. We have 2 tortoises here, and the plants on the island that this tortoise is living on are pretty tall. There's some trees up there as well. So, thinking through this, a tortoise can have variation in shell shape and neck length. So, just like how people are all different shapes and sizes, tortoises are different shapes and sizes. Tortoises with longer necks and curved shells, they can eat the higher leaves off the ground. Like this one has a very curved shell, whereas this one's kind of flat. So this tortoise over here might be able to get up a little bit higher. The tortoises with the short necks will not be able to eat on the islands with the tall plants just because they can't reach high enough. And over time, the islands with taller plants will only have tortoises with the longer necks and curved shells because all of those tortoises died out. So slowly over time, we're seeing that we are changing a species, but not because the more that this tortoise stretches its neck, the longer its babies' necks are going to be. No, it's because this one survived to have babies and that one died. So then, on a short plant island, it really doesn't matter the length of the tortoise. Tortoises with longer necks and curved shells can still eat leaves off of the ground, and so over time we're going to see both tortoises existing. We're going to have a lot of variation. But because there is no pressure to kill out the short-necked turtles, that all of the turtles are going to survive. Pause this video, answer question 2. Okay, so variation, aka diversity. Individuals naturally vary from each other. Now, notice we got the star here, so this is important to write down. Pause it if you need to. Variation, variety, vary, differences, diversity. These are all synonyms. They're just different ways that we are using the term. English is funny like that. So variation and variety both mean that we have a lot of different things going on. If something varies with an A, it means that there's a lot of differences there. So variation, variety, vary, differences, diversity, all of these are the same. So individuals naturally vary from each other. This is a flower, it's called a monkey flower, and it's got a lot of different shapes, colors. I'm going to assume that they would also be different heights, but there's a lot of variety within this one type of flower, and the same can be true for humans as well. We have a lot of variety in how we look. Variations that are genetically based, and this is what's super important. They are genetically based. They are in your genes. They can be passed down from one generation to the next. So, if I end up having kids, then chances are my kids are going to get my average height and my super pale skin. Those things are genetically based and can be passed down. Some variations are going to be better than others. So for example, those tortoises. If you are on a tall plant island where you have to be tall in order to reach all of the leaves, then it's going to be better if you are a taller tortoise. And this variety is what nature is going to act upon. Variation is good. Variation is useful. We love having it within the human population and within animals. It makes a population very healthy and stable. But if there is something that alters the environment, then whatever variety or variation is best is most likely going to proliferate on into next generations. Pause this, answer question 3. Okay, so evolution. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Evolution is simply change in a species over time. Humans have evolved over time. I'm not sure if you guys have seen many pictures of our founding fathers, but they were not cute. I like to think that today humans are a lot more attractive than they once were. We are taller, we are stronger, we are healthier, we're not as inbred as some of those royal families were. In general, humans are more attractive. The human species has evolved over time. We have changed over time. So, evolution is change in a species over time. Each population has variation. Each population is going to have some really tall individuals, some really short individuals, some really cute individuals, some really ugly individuals. And some of those variations are going to be better than others. For example, the tall plants with the tall tortoises. That is a variation that is really, really essential and helpful for those animals. So, adaptations, and this is a new term for us. Remember, we got the star up here. Adaptations are naturally selected. So we have variations that are good. That is an adaptation. They are naturally selected for, meaning that we end up seeing that more often within the population. If it's better to be a taller tortoise, then over time we will expect our tortoise population to get taller and taller and taller. And this is what leads to the evolution of the population. Answer question 4. Okay. Now that you have answered question 4, I need you to go back and watch part 2 of this video. See you soon.